Good evening and welcome by me and the group of spinners in Confindustria Toscana Nord. I am Raffaella Pinori. I'm glad to coordinate the group of spinners in the Prato Textile District. In the district, there are about 80 mills who produce yards with 100 and 500 employees. The sector has recovered the loss of the pandemic period, facing a big growth during the 2022. We estimate that the production will exceed the 620 million of the last pre-pandemic period. Why we wanted to organize this workshop during the edition of Pitti Filati. Fibers like mohair, wool and alpaca are the most valuable fibers used in the production of the spinners in Prato. Spinners have done big investments in sustainability, and we have a witness, which is Francesca, and particularly in the area of animal welfare and the production tracking. This workshop wants to be a moment of discussion with the main fiber association to push the farmers to go in the direction to guarantee a growth of the availability of traceable fibers. For this reason, I thank all the participants and in particular BKB Ltd, Mohair South Africa, Schneider Group and AYA for their participation. Our relator is Francesca Rulli, one of the most estimated expert of sustainability process and certification. So I thank you. Francesca will introduce the guest and good job. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Raffaella, and thank you for Confindustria Toscana Nord for this. Before starting this interesting conversation with our guests, I want to introduce this animal welfare topic. It's a really interesting topic today because you know that when we speak about breeding, animal breeding and agricultural crops, in our mind we think to a farm, something really different from a big company or a big industry, but a group of persons, of animals, and sometimes not so organized activities. And if we link this concept with the big topic of the global fashion agenda, so we have to work on environment, on social issues, on biodiversity, soil degradation, emissions, water, we have to think that in these farms we have a big challenge. We have a really fragmented supply chain. And I'm really interested today to listen to the activity of the association, to listen to the program that we are working on to convert and to reduce the impact along the entire supply chain arriving to the farms. So I introduce our guests that can help us to understand what they are doing with two main focuses. I think the market have to increase volumes of these materials, sustainable materials, and the market need also to increase the credibility of these sustainability attributes. So we have to discuss together and emphasize what you are doing, looking at traceability, looking at certification, but looking in particular at increasing numbers of farmers and operators that can help the market to convert. I start with Brony Bota. I don't know if it's correct. Technical support in textile exchange. And we know that you are really, really involved with your standard in these activities. Please tell us what are the news, what are you working on? ArabOS is an important standard, so you can help us to understand.
Is this on? All right. Are you going to put the presentation up by any chance? Right. So, I think that's better. Can I stand so I can see my presentation? So just as an introduction, I think it's quite important to understand that today I'm actually presenting a little bit as a proxy for Textile Exchange, as some of my colleagues could not be here today. So if I cannot answer any of the questions at the end, please do not worry. You're welcome to give me your queries and I will take them back to Textile Exchange and get you the answers that you need. This is a heads up. Do you want me to just start and then it'll, as we go? All right, so just all right, just to start off, I think it's very important to just paint a picture of context. I think it's very important to note that Textile Exchange, everything that's happening in Textile Exchange right now is being framed by the Climate Plus strategy. And this Climate Plus strategy is a bit of a two-prong. We have the climate part of Climate Plus is the Textile Exchange's commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions across the pre-spinning phase by 45% by 2030. The plus part of Climate Plus talks to two critical things. The one being that any of these efforts need to be done in partnership with industry. And the second thing is realizing that Textile Exchange understands that we need to go beyond just greenhouse gas emissions. We need to be considering soil biodiversity and water health. Next slide. So we all know today we're going to focus on animal welfare, and I think it's quite clear that we all know why animal welfare is important. We know that good animal welfare leads to good production. We also understand that there is a consumer drive that is looking for assurances. They need to know that the animals we're working with are managed soundly and are safe and sound. And then we also need to work on accurately portraying the image of animal fibers and within, because we know that we've had some bad press in the past that is not necessarily always accurate. We need to make sure that we can do that. So I think one thing that's very critical to understand, there's been a paradigm shift. There's been a paradigm shift in the way that we look at animal welfare. In the past, animal welfare was basically driven by the 5 freedoms, which really looked at avoidance of the negative impacts that you could have to animal welfare. And the scientists working in that space have realized that we need to be looking at it more holistically and rather focusing on the positive, the positive kind of angle that we need to be looking at from animal welfare. So looking at it holistically, just by focusing on the negatives, we're missing a lot of critical, important indicators on the positives too. Next slide. So at this point in time, most of you will all be well aware of the responsible animal fibers. I'm going to refer to it like that. It includes, at this point in time, responsible wool standard, responsible mohair standard, and responsible alpaca standard. And the full responsible animal fibers is underpinned by these 5 provisions. So no longer the 5 freedoms, but the 5 provisions. And that is good nutrition, good environment, good health, acceptable behavior, and good mental experiences. All right. Since the beginning of certification, since the start of certification, we've already seen a big change in some concepts. Can you go back one quickly? Sorry. And that would be that we've seen a cessation in mulesing, so definitely a decrease in mulesing. The fact that castration and tail docking now does not happen to animals less than 8 weeks old. Pain relief for painful procedures is definitely required where it's accessible. And then shearing is now governed by proper standard operating procedures that call for trained workers, skilled workers who know how to handle animals correctly. Next slide. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of how what we're seeing on our trends. Textile Exchange is currently collating a whole bunch of industry data that is going to be informing the preferred fibers and materials report that should be available in September. But initial data is already showing that there has been a very good improvement in both certified RWS and RMS. And we're happy to say that for alpaca, the first few farms have actually been certified, and there are numerous farms planned for the near future to carry on with that certification process. Next one. All right. So the way forward for us is definitely to continuously work at increasing the number of certified farms and therefore increasing access to yields. And then making sure that we can support and help farmers transition over to transition them to get to a point of certification readiness. And then we've got the goal that by 2030, all animal fibers are regenerative, supported by the implementation of the responsible animal fiber certifications. And the ultimate thing that we're trying to do, and the most important takeaway here, is that we have a vision that animal fiber production is high welfare and driving a positive environmental impact. It doesn't help for us to be focusing completely on environmental management if it's at the detriment of social responsibility and animal welfare. And I think that's where I'm going to end it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And so listening to your explanation, I think that we can reflect on how animal welfare can be connected to all the topic of sustainability, planet and social topics. So establishing a new system, new verification, new certification, and increasing numbers on this supply chain, we work in the big topics of the global fashion agenda, biodiversity, social responsibility, and so on. So I think that Lindsay can help us to understand what BKB
Thank you.
is working on in this direction.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. What a wonderful privilege to be back and to see each other in person again. It's been a while. Thank you for having us and inviting us to share a bit more today. So I'm Lindsay Humphreys, the Sustainability Manager for Wool and Mohair at BKB in South Africa. Go to the next slide, thanks. So just a little bit about us for those that don't know, it's not very common for a brokerage to actually be on a platform like this. So BKB is 100+ years old, so been in the industry, and the biggest agricultural company in South Africa. And we have around 8,000 commercial producers in South Africa and 90,000 micro producers. So you may want to know, what is a micro producer? That is a producer that cannot necessarily fill a bale of wool or mohair. So at BKB, we accept even if somebody arrives with a bag and they have a producer number and they have integrity and they have a tracking system, we will accept that and actually bin that together and supply it to market still. So there's no barrier to entry for a farmer at BKB. 75% of all South African mohair is managed through BKB, and 65% of all South African wool is managed through BKB. We're also the largest single supplier of RWS wool and RMS mohair globally, and are continuing to grow. So what we pride ourselves on mostly is our robust system. To have implemented a system like that with integrity, We started at BKB with our internal audits being done by staff members of BKB. We had 10 internal auditors. And as the group grew to larger levels, we actually outsourced that to a third-party certification body to actually do the internal audits. So we like to say what makes us sleep at night is understanding that we actually are addressing those challenges and making sure that we actually are understanding what's happening at farm level, even in terms of animal welfare. Our third-party audits by control union, again, we actually double up on the amount of third-party audits that are required of us, and for the precise same reason. So let's talk about volumes. I think that's most interesting for a lot of the supply chain. At this point, we have around 1 million kilograms of RMS going into the market, and that is steadily growing. And we have 12 million kilograms of wool going into the market. We actually are seeing a larger uptake by South African farmers who haven't previously been audited to RWS actually wanting to do that. So on a weekly basis, we're actually seeing that number grow. And then around 15,000 RWS, 1,500 RWS RMS farms are certified in South Africa. The map, the little triangles on the map depict where all those farms are situated. So you can see a footprint, and then the little yellow overlays are actually where our field agents. So this wouldn't be possible without a resource in South Africa. So 70 field agents actually support each one of those farmers, have a dedicated field agent, which is their first point of call and absolutely everything that they have a question on. So in terms of visiting farms, is every farmer will get a personal visit very often in every area. So let's talk about our challenges and solutions. So we talk about certifications, and certainly a challenge that we all feel and across the supply chain is the cost. We have a cost issue. We do feel that as a group audit model, it makes it more affordable for a producer to actually become certified. And we found that that is the way that we were able to scale up like we have. And then also the in-field support from our field agents. As I mentioned, they are an integral part of our team in actually managing that relationship, and also all of the resource requirements that a producer may require. So what is our need for cost-effective systems to manage all spheres of management? So what we have implemented is a decision support service at BKB. This speaks directly to animal welfare. So we have an animal scientist employed to service our clients. Through RFI tagging on the animals, they can actually identify data and use that data to help. The animal scientist likes to relate it to Lego pieces, and then building those Lego pieces into a pattern and using data that you have on your farm to make informed decisions. So simply by the way weighing your animals, often you can tell that they are healthy, or is there something wrong, and is there something we need to identify. So this is a service, our digital data management system, including blockchains. This also helps sort of track it through the supply chain right from farm level. We also have RFID tracking on each bale that enters the brokerage, and that carries right through the system in terms of the traceability from farm. And then what does the future look like for BKB? So we're very excited to have started with a communal certification process in Lesotho. It is in a trial, and we're about 3/4 the way through the trial. And I must say, going in, it was a lot about understanding, is this a possibility? Is this something that is actually achievable, that doesn't devalue the standard or what the standard stands for? And we're about 3/4 of the way through this project, and we are feeling very confident that it's very possible to actually implement this on a communal system. And the learnings from this communal work, we actually will bring back into South Africa and start working on those communal farmers that we reported on. Continuous training for our field agents. This never ends. We permanently training on animal welfare, updated skills, farm worker trainings, and we've even moved into a space of upskilling our field agents on regenerative practices as well, that they're able to actually support the questions coming from the farmer. And then I think importantly, scaling through collaboration is, I don't think that anyone in this industry can do anything alone. And I think the more that we work together, the easier this will become. I do understand that multiple certifications and multiple systems cause confusion throughout the supply chain, and it does segment that market. So I think some sort of alignment in certifications is really what we're aiming towards, is let's work together, let's find those alignments, let's have these conversations and find the solutions to these problems that we experience along the way. And then what we're doing is we are working very closely with Land to Market, and we do have EOV certified farmers in South Africa. But what we're working on at BKB is a property profiling system where we actually take our farmers through a system that not only tracks their animal welfare, but also their land welfare, and positions them, equips them to actually take that further into some sort of certification in the future. So it's a wonderful system. We're very excited about it, and that's sort of where we're moving into the future. So we are supported here by a team today. So if there's questions outside of my realm, we have people that can answer it, and we also are around if anyone wants to have a chat. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I write some words, alignment of certification and technology and traceability as tools to increase numbers. I think we can also speak about what we can do to let brands understand that this is a path, and they have to respect the work we are doing, you are doing in the farm, and the numbers are arriving. So now we listen to Jackie Gant, Relationship Officer of Mohair, South Africa. Thank you.
Hello, I want to echo Lindsay's words. It's a privilege to be here. Thank you for taking the time to come and listen to us. We were fortunately in Italy about a month ago, met with quite a number of the spinners in the hall, and it was wonderful to be back to meeting in person, and I've just been so excited about being back at Pitti Filati. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to, before we go into the slide, Mohair South Africa is a non-profit organization, an industry body that represents from the farmer to the processor. So I just want you to understand we don't manufacture anything, we are an industry body, okay. Globally, our figures for the Mohair production for 2021 is 4.59 kilograms. Global Mohair production, while South Africa is the largest mohair producer in the world, collectively with the Lesotho clip, we produce 2/3 of the mohair clip. The other countries that produce mohair are Australia, Turkey, New Zealand, Argentina, and the USA. And the percentages you see. Okay, so our sustainability journey started right from 2018. RMS since 2020. Looking at regenerative agriculture, a new topic of discussion that when I started with Mohair South Africa in May last year, everything was about animal health, and within 2 weeks, everything was about regenerative farming practices. So the speed by which this is moving, it is fast. There's no map we all have to find and discover this and work on it together, as Lindsay said. Traceability of fiber, we're working with Orotane, and life cycle assessments, LCAs. Currently, this mohair industry doesn't have one, and we are in the process of discussing and moving forward with that. Okay, so the implementation of the responsible mohair standard. Currently, yes, obviously it's recognized globally. 70% of the South African mohair, and when I speak figures, I talk about the mohair industry collectively in South Africa. 70% of the mohair farmers in South Africa are RMS certified, and that has moved since March 2020. It was a hell of a feat to get there that quickly. And more than 1,200 companies post-gate are certified. So this is hot off the press. We've had our summer season auctions, and these are the figures from the first 6 auctions that took place, or 7 auctions that took place, and you'll see how the different, this is all RMS certified mohair that was presented and sold. So collectively for the summer season, 69% of the mohair sold on the summer season was RMS certified. All right, so Mohe South Africa about 2 years ago started with Oratane. Oratane is a forensic science company based in Dunedin in New Zealand, South Island. And we started working with them to starting a project to be able to identify mohair from South Africa. So we were taking samples from the greasy mohair before it went onto auction and sending it away so that they could build a database of mohair to be able to trace it back to South Africa. So the important thing is that they have offices around the globe, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and Switzerland. So it's not just New Zealand based. So if anybody's interested in reaching out to them, that's where you'll find them. Okay, so how does this work? The animals grazing on a piece of land will absorb the nutrients and chemical elements and isotopes, and that's what they use to be able to identify the source of where this or any animal fiber for that matter comes from. So these are collected, there's a whole protocol and process and very scientific way in which you have to collect and send off the samples to New Zealand. And at the end of the day, we're wanting a fit for purpose database, which we now have. While we were doing our South African mohair assessments, for some of you may not know, mohair is imported into South Africa from producer countries like New Zealand, Australia, from Argentina, etc. So we've taken those samples of greasy and profiled those as well. So we're not just doing it from a South African point of view, we're talking about all the different mohair producing countries. Currently, what can we do with this? We can verify 100% mohair products, but that's not enough. Okay, we now have this fit for purpose database, as I mentioned. Part of the contract is to supply samples from mohair from South Africa and Lesotho, as I said, in other mohair producing countries. The next step is to do a pilot project with our mohair empowerment farmers in South Africa. So it's a small enough group to manage, because ultimately one would want to be able to identify mohair coming from which farm. So this is a long process that we're going to be walking, but this is what the future is. It's been done in the fruit industry. It's been done in the wine industry in South Africa. Okay, so the future. Looking at developing separation techniques. So in other words, being able to identify what other materials are in a product or a swatch. And yeah, we need to look at all the different blends that are done, because not everything is pure mohair. So there are blends with wool, etc. What is probably the best care for our animals in South Africa is that we are the only country to have a dedicated vet that specializes in Gora goats. And Dr. Mackey seen above there, he is on duty 24/7. So farmers, thanks to cell phones and technology, they can take photographs of animals and they can send him pictures, they can phone him and discuss whatever concerns they might have. He does an enormous amount of training with farmers, with the farm workers, at farmers' days that are organized right through the production areas. And this is a bonus and a win to have this man's skill, passion, and also importantly, he was very instrumental in being part of drawing up the RMS standards as well. So it wasn't just people dictating to us, it was also him being very involved in saying, this is possible, that's not possible. So what we have from this is best practice videos and documents, and he has gone through that, and it's translated into 4 different languages for South Africa, which is important for implementation level. Okay, as I've said, this is an example of farm workers on a farm being presented to, explained. They have to do little exercises with him to see that they understand what he's explained, and everybody, and the joy from, you talk about social upliftment, the joy from this learning has been incredible to see the development amongst the farm workers. Okay, for those of you who are not aware, there's a Natural Fiber Connect. if we think of textile exchange, it's obviously very brand focused. And whereas we've decided collectively, the natural fibers, wool, mohair, cashmere, and alpaca, to form a collaborative, to stand together and to look at partnerships of how we can work together to achieve common goals, understanding things better from a grower's perspective, because obviously on one side we've got the brands, and that's, I think you were saying earlier, it's a very different story there. And then, you know, what happens on the farm side. So from September 7th, this year, there will be an online virtual conference, and we're encouraging everybody to sign up to be part of this. Well, he might be mentioning it in his speech as well. But we really think it's important that we look in the global textile scale. Animal fibers are small, but they're really important. And it's the first time I think that everybody's coming together like this. I don't think it's happened before. And I think this is what is so exciting about the journey going forward. Right, if anyone's got questions, I'm sure we can take those after. Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you. We listen to best practices, to culture. We are facing a big change. So in listening to Jackie, we learned that this is an important topic. New best practices have to be set in the supply chain. So this is a matter of also of verification and the credibility of these standards. And Willy Gallia comes from Schneider Group, Chief Sustainability Officer. So I think that in your company you have a strategy on sustainability based on also on verification and traceability. Do you want to tell us something about it?
Yes, thank you, Francesca, very much. Thanks everyone for being here. It's also good to see everyone again. And I will go straight to it because it's been a long session, so I will try to get to it straight away and to try to say something new, because basically everything has already been said. I will try to add things to this. Yeah. So Schneider Group, I hope most of you might know what we do is we do the sourcing and first processing of the wool and cashmere basically, but also other animal fibers like vicuña, guanaco, and alpaca in some cases as well. And we are the first chain in the industry, but also very close to the growers. In some cases, like in Argentina, we also manage farms. So we are actually producers of wool and vicuña in that case. So that's a bit of the experience and where we sit in the supply chain. So the key concepts of that I think of when we talk about animal welfare are very simple, maybe. First is what brands want. They always want to minimize their risks. That's how the focus on animal welfare started for brands. In the case of growers, and in our case, we were already doing this as a way to maximize the productivity of sheep and of the animals in general. And this is a basic principle of every grower and producer. You know, you have to take care of your land and of your animal. So it's a positive story actually that has been changed in the light of some true things that were happening and that we as an industry set to revise and are doing so for some time now. So in Schneider, we have similarly like in Textile Exchange and many other, we've got a strategy that is encompassing every initiative around sustainability, Together 2030, and has 4 pillars. One is the processing stage, which we do. The second one is the sourcing, so the product that we deliver and that we source from our producers. The third pillar is related to connectivity and the need to open and collaborate. And the fourth pillar is cultural. It's basically acknowledging that we need to change the mindset of the industry and of the businesses to achieve the goals of sustainability. Sorry, can we go back? So in the first Wool Connect conference we did two or 3 years ago, the first thing that we noticed there is that the multiplicity of standards, no? So these are some statistics that less than 20% of the greasy wool is certified today. Well, there's, as you know already, many standards out there. And when we talk about animal welfare in the wool industry, mulesing is the first and most important issue that always comes to mind. And that only happens in Australia, very important to note. So when we talk about mulesing, it's an issue that we are all involved in it, but it happens in Australia, and we've been working there we source a lot from Australia, so we have a lot of initiatives with Authentico and with the RWS to change this reality and help the industry improve, and it's been improving. So it's a very positive point where we are today. Thanks. This is just a general statistic of the production this year that we took of the standards from Australia, and this links to the slide before. So just that the production is increasing strong of certified wools. Next slide, please. So what we have been doing before, we've been always engaged with the RWS from the beginning in Argentina with Textile Exchange. We actually helped developing the standard, adapting it for Argentina. So as I was saying, for us it was a very positive thing, because we were doing animal welfare, but we were not getting a premium for it, other than the increase in output or productivity of sheep. And we didn't know if we were doing things right. So the framework that we got from the RWS was very helpful to see where we could improve and to see where we were doing good, and also as a teaching tool for the growers and for our activities. It was very, very positive. On top of that, of course, two things: we got the added value and the recognition from brands, obviously, and the traceability, which is central. That's one of the things I want to highlight. Authentico, it was rolled out in 2018 in Australia and New Zealand already. And it was essentially a traceability system that we had. And then we incorporated gradually all the principles of animal welfare. And we also have an RWS group in Australia that is growing a lot, because we believe in collaboration and we actually practice it. So we promote the RWS also, and we also promote the other standards. Authentico acknowledges sustainable Abelusi standard, sustainable cable standards, and many others, because we know that we're basically trying to do the same as an industry, and we're trying to produce to the pipeline more certified and ethical or sustainable or responsible wool, as you want to call it. So we acknowledge this reality through our standard. And the last point is the direct dialogue that we established with Wool Connect, and that as Jackie anticipated, this year we progressed into a multi-fiber approach, because what we do is try to bring the grower to the table, their realities, and also to, of course, present to them the ambitions of brands. Next slide, please. So I'm going to skip this because it's been already taken care of by Jackie, but do support this. This is very important initiative to get access to the growers. The first way to approach a grower is by a neutral place where they feel safe, where you can learn from them more than tell them what to do in most cases. So to change the narrative, it is essential that we have a space where everybody feels safe to express themselves, and it's the first point of contact to then generate the action that comes after. So what is needed to progress? Traceability of all wool and natural fibers in general. The price premiums will do the rest. So when you have an ambition, if you want more sustainable wool or ethical wool, if you have a traceability system, then the price mechanism will make sure that we get more and we produce more of what is needed. So the first step is to focus on traceability for everyone, I would say. Then we have the communications, as we said in a couple of slides already. It's very important. And to understand the context when we talk about animal welfare, like we were saying before, in many cases, sheep, I can vouch for them. You look at the state of the world, what is happening, and they have better lives than many of the people in the world. So, you know, it's important to have a context when we address the issues. Then who controls the narrative is important. We were talking about this before. We have to take the narrative to a positive space through the 5 provisions that are already a positive way to focus on it, and by bringing growers on board. Yeah, and well, thank you very much. I leave it there because, thank you.
Thank you, William. Listening to your speech, I have listened to the same thing. So it's really interesting, this convergence, this alignment on the topic of traceability, of certification, of verification, and on culture. So I listened to Juan from Alpaca Association. I know that Alpaca Association is reinforcing the competitiveness of this value chain. So the main aim is this focus. So please tell us what you are doing in this direction.
Well, I put up a small presentation. We were the last natural fiber to be hit by PETA. No? We had first wool, then we had mohair, and we were the last in line. And we started off as, if you can pass to the other one. We started off with a guild approach, you know, to try to carry forward the RAS. And this is why the International Alpaca Association has been the leader since day one in working with Textile Exchange in the International Working Group. And we have worked through more than 10 months until all the aspects of the RAS was fine-tuned and put into place. And it was actually in early May of 2021 that was already launched publicly. And it took 5 months. I think that was a record, you know, for the first farm to start being audited. And unfortunately, it took another 4 months, you know, for the auditing body to give a certification. It could have been earlier, but it was this year, early March, that the first 5 farms were certified with RAS. This is a map of how the growers of alpaca are positioned in Peru. You can see the red area, which is in the regions of Puno, Arequipa, and it's Cusco, also another big region of breeders, where we have the majority of concentration. I would say 60% of the alpaca production for fiber is located in these regions. We have 5 million alpacas in Peru. 75% of the population comes from our country worldwide. 25% comes from other producing countries. We have 2 breeds of alpacas. One is Huacayo and the other one is Suri. One of the advantages is that alpaca has 22 natural tones compared to other fibers like mohair or wool that have only a single color, or maybe some black sheep also as well. Alpacas live in a high altitude of 3,800 to 5,200 meters above the sea level. And this is a very important issue. There are 94,000 families that live and make a living from alpaca breeding, and 150,000 direct jobs depend on alpaca. Next, please. the millenary legacy of alpaca. It's a little bit of history. Alpacas arrived about 3 million years ago to the Andes. They were domesticated 5,000 years ago. That's a very important milestone, because that gives you an idea that they have lived with the inhabitants since many thousand years ago. The Andean ecosystems are very inhospitable, fragile, and very poor in pastures and soils. Alpacas transform these poor Andean natural pastures into a noble and precious fiber. The Andean cosmovision, it's what the inhabitants of the Andes call the Pachamama, arranged for men and animals to live in perfect harmony. Alpaca is one of the principal means of income for a lot of families in the Andes, where they can not grow any other crop besides potato. They have alpacas in their potatoes. This is why it's very cherished, no? And like Willie said, you know, they're family members, and sometimes they live better than humans live. No? Next, please. The Peruvian government has been a key player, you know, with the promotion of alpaca and with the protection of alpaca. Even though we're not in our best political times in the country, no, but some institutions have managed to have a long-term strategy for alpaca. Alpaca was declared 10 years ago a flagship product in Peru. Likewise, we have a drink which is from the grape called pisco. It's also a flagship product of Peru. Alpaca has been recognized as a source of income for many thousands of families in the country. And I would say that alpaca has, the whole alpaca value-added chain has developed in a way that it has not been done in other countries. I don't want to talk bad about South Africa, but you don't have a huge value-added chain towards the mohair, whereas in alpaca we have a huge value-added chain, and that's what it makes more socially dependent for some breeders and some fashion makers, some artisans, and some industries. No, From Peru has been From Peru is a promotion agency in Peru. That takes care of promotions of all the exporting products in the country. And they developed the alpaca mark over here, the Alpaca del Peru, which alongside with the alpaca mark from the International Association are the two marks recognized to identify an alpaca product. Also, the government, since 4 years ago, started working on a norm, a special norm for animal welfare in the shearing stage, and that has already been approved and is already in place, and that stipulates a certain protocol to shear the alpaca animals. No, unlike sheep or unlike mohair. Alpaca is a bigger animal, so it takes at least 2 or 3 persons to grab the animal and practically immobilize. And like any other person or animal, no, they try to defend themselves. That doesn't mean that the animal is not treated properly or is being in a way, you know, going through a maltreatment. No, it takes 3 persons to immobilize the animal, and it takes 5 minutes to shear it. So sometimes when we address the issue of animal welfare for the shearing, which were the issues, you know, from this PETA video, I always tell the story that alpaca lives 365 days out in the pastures in freedom, and for 5 minutes, it's taken into an immobilization situation for 5 minutes, and it's sheared and it's let out, you know, to be again, in the wild and pasturing. The animal welfare protocols have also been made in work with the University of Madrid, the Polytechnical University of Madrid. They were developed with the government together. Also, the government has developed an LCA and carbon footprint for alpaca. Also, the government takes care of promotion of alpaca. They do a lot of road shows in Asia and also in America and here in Europe, in Italy, and in France. And they are also key contributors to Alpaca Fiesta, which is our main event done by the International Alpaca Association. Please. RAS in the background. As I said earlier, in the mid-2020s, Textile Exchange formed the International Working Group for RAS. A group of leading breeders and professionals was set up to contribute to IWG. By December 2020, the International Alpaca Association was asked to lead and develop the RAS project in Peru. By March 2021, a proposal was launched at the last RAS Textile Exchange Roundtable. And since early June 2020, a RAS guild has been formed and drafted by the two main guilds in Peru for alpaca, which are International Alpaca Association and Ascalpe, which is a technical group. Next. The project is a 5-year project, which is targeting the regions of Puno, Cusco, Arequipa, and central Peru, Pasco, and Huancavelica and Junín. The aim is to target 3,000 alpaca farms. It's focused for small and medium farmers. At the end of 5 years, we are expecting to have 1 million alpacas RAS certified. Well, 1 million alpacas living in RAS certified farms, which represents about 20% of the alpaca production, which is about 1,200 tons of fiber. However, this project is at the early stages. We are trying to raise some funds, as a guild, and we are expecting by the end of this year to kick off. In the meantime, and on the next slide, the industry has rushed with doing some RAS certifications on their own, forced mainly by the market, and the need to have fiber out there in the market. I put this table together, these are approx figures, but close to it. I mean, it's more or less what it is, And here we have on the left column the main groups or institutions who have undertaken the whole RAS development on their own and the RAS certifications. So we have 380 farms already certified in Peru. Altogether is 235,000 kilos of greasy fiber. Most of it sold out already, And we're expecting on the private RAS on the second year to increase 20% that first year output. And on the third year, another 20%. That's a very moderate forecast, but I think it's manageable. But what is not manageable is that the whole industry can undertake by themselves the certification of the farms. It's nearly impossible. So we need to do it together with the whole guilds, and we would need financing, definitely. Financing is a must. This is why we're asking for Textile Exchange to help us, not money-wise, but to organize the main brands to pitch in, if they can. That would go for the certification, Well, this is more or less what it is in alpaca. We were the last ones, to be hit. And I mean, we're hanging in there.
We have another guest. Not physical. Thank you. Thank you. We have another connection, not in presence. So we have also Zara Morris Traynor, Head of Research and Policy of Sustainable Fiber Alliance. We have listened to the main animal fibers. Now we have the cashmere. So everybody can tell the story. Hello, Zara.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Can you hear?
Yes.
Am I coming through okay? Can you hear me?
No, we cannot hear you.
I've got my speed. I'm not on mute.
Try now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, I'll just try sharing my screen next. Have you got that up?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, hi everyone. My name's Zara, and I'm Head of Research and Policy at the Sustainable Fibre Alliance. So I'm representing Kashmir at the table here today. So thanks very much for inviting us to be part of the conference, and I'm really gutted that I can't be there to meet you all in person. That would have been a fantastic opportunity to actually talk face to face, but this is definitely better than not being there at all. So I'm going to share a snapshot of the welfare challenges that we face with cashmere production. And as Willie mentioned, bring some of the context and the herder reality to the table. So the SFA is a global multi-stakeholder and member-based organisation, and our mission is to ensure the long-term viability of the cashmere sector. And we do this through the promotion of our cashmere standard, which addresses environmental, social, and animal welfare concerns. Our goals are to minimise the environmental impact of cashmere production, safeguard the livelihoods of herders, and ensure that cashmere meets high welfare standards. So our initial focus when we were first founded in 2015 was to address concerns around overgrazing and land degradation in Mongolia. And so for that, we developed a code of practice on rangeland stewardship. But since then, we've expanded our scope quite a bit. We've added codes of practice on animal welfare, driven by likes of PETA and the need by brands to manage that risk. And we've also moved to the first stage processing of cashmere fibre with a code of practice that looks at the scouring and dehairing process. And 2 years ago, we partnered with the International Cooperation Committee of Animal Welfare, which is a Chinese NGO, and we developed a new welfare-based code of practice that was adapted to the context in China. So that same year, we also set up our chain of custody process to trace the fibre through the supply chain and allow product-based claims. We're the only cashmere standard that operates in both Mongolia and China, and having a presence in both countries is important because around 80% of fibre that is produced in Mongolia actually crosses the border and is processed in China. And we work primarily in the Inner Mongolian Autonomous Region, which is where most cashmere processing is carried out. Now that we have a chain of custody in place, demand for certified fibre is increasing quite rapidly. Herders are starting to approach us wanting to adopt our standard, and our operations are needing to expand quite quickly. So that presents a challenge for us for ensuring that we keep a robust and credible assurance process. By next year, we expect to certify almost 2,000 tonnes of dehaired fibre, which will represent around 20% of global production. When we developed our animal welfare codes of practice, we based these requirements on the 5 freedoms of animal welfare, much as a lot of other welfare standards have done. However, as we've just heard from the Textile Exchange presentation, there are challenges with this model, and we're looking to shift away from the freedoms and move to the provisions model. But I wanted to show you, to talk through some of the limitations of the 5 freedoms and show you why we're choosing to do this with cashmere. So first, we need to understand the realities of herding in this part of the world. These rangelands are often harsh and they're really unpredictable environments. You get droughts, extreme storms, like massive temperature fluctuations. And herders are living in this environment as well. They're living and moving with their animals, which are their main source of food. And the animals provide the meat and dairy products, as well as felt and skins for clothing and other uses. And every year, herders face this challenge of trying to maximize their production of cashmere, which is their main source of income, but also not overgrazing their pasture. And they need to keep as many goats alive through the winter as they can. And then when the spring comes around, they need to comb as fast as they can to access the early season prices, which drop quite rapidly as the season progresses. And without this fiber, these herders, they wouldn't have a viable means to maintain their livelihood. And then we face another reality, which is that the extent to which the 5 freedoms can be met varies considerably depending on the type of production system. So now that we're working in both Mongolia and China, we have to take this into account. So in Mongolia, herders are semi-nomadic, which means that they shift regularly between seasons to access new pasture. And until recently, this was also the norm in China. However, efforts by the Chinese government to sedentarize herders and privatize grazing land have changed the way that goats are raised in this region. So herders in China, they're no longer nomadic, and they now keep their goats in large fenced areas, and many use barns for part of the year. So it's much more familiar. It's much more like the Western style farming that we're familiar with. You can see in this table here that the particular challenges associated with the 5 freedoms vary between the 2 types of production. In Mongolia, one issue we're seeing is struggle to provide supplementary heating for newborn kids, for example, and challenges with castration due to not having access to effective methods of pain relief. Whereas in China, we found that farms can struggle with providing enough enrichment for goats that are confined in fenced pens and in shelters. And that's something that we don't see in Mongolia because the goats there have free range of the pasture. So with the freedom model, there are trade-offs basically that need to be considered. So while freedom to express natural behavior is where the Mongolian system really excels, if we look at the freedom from discomfort, goats in Mongolia are exposed to the elements much more and may experience discomfort from the heat and cold and other extreme weather. And these discomforts can be much more easily avoided in the farms of China, where goats are kept inside and protected from the elements for part of the year. But this does bring new potential for discomfort from other things like crowded conditions, lack of fresh air, and freedom to express natural grazing behavior. So you have to ask, what's the worst discomfort? And it's quite hard to answer that question. We, at the SFA, we think that both systems can meet high welfare standards, but they do require different approaches. And so we need to have flexibility with how herders demonstrate compliance with our welfare requirements. It also means that we have to target our training efforts at the specific challenges that are inherent to each system. And we do that by providing guidance and training materials that are tailored. And herders also receive tailored development plans and on-the-ground support to improve their compliance. So basically, the 5 freedoms are useful to consider because they prompt a lot of good ethical and practical questions when designing a standard. But the model is limited and it's not possible to achieve all 5 freedoms. Overall, our main aim needs to be to prevent suffering and discomfort wherever possible and minimize it everywhere else. But moving towards the 5 provision model and making sure that we collaborate with stakeholders, including herders and animal welfare experts, we can develop a set of context-specific best practices that will improve the welfare of goats wherever they are. And on that note, I just wanted to mention that we're currently revising our standard and we'll be adopting a new structure based on 5 key principles. The first, which will be about animal welfare. And this is going to promote a more holistic view of sustainable cashmere because, as was mentioned at the start of these talks, animal welfare is just one component of sustainability, and it's really closely interlinked with the other principles. So when goat numbers exceed the carrying capacity of the pasture, for example, it's bad for the environment, bad for wildlife, but it's also bad for the goats who might struggle to get enough food. And when it comes to fiber quality, as another example, the goats need to be healthy and free of disease to produce good fiber yield and for that fiber to be of good quality. And a healthy herd means good fiber production, which means herders get their income and have economic security. So it's all interconnected and all aspects need to be considered for cashmere to be truly sustainable. So we're currently reaching out to experts in the field of animal welfare and particularly from the natural fiber industries. So please get in touch if you'd like to be involved in any way in this process. Thanks for your time. Reach out anytime if you'd like to chat cashmere.
Thank you, Zara. So we are perfect in time. I have a little conclusion and then I give you the floor for some question if you have. Listening to all your speech, I see that alignment is the basis of the increasing numbers we have seen during your presentation. So thanks to textile exchange activities, we can see that this standardization increased numbers and volumes in this supply chain. And best practices are becoming certified standards. So we are improving our culture, our knowledge, and this industry, I think, have to be protected because I don't remember the number, but I think we are speaking about a little part of the total amount of fibers we use in the textile and luxury sector. So we have to protect this production. Also creating awareness in the brand perspective because they have to know that all this job that this association and farmers are doing. So thank you so much for your speech and your stories. If you have some question, I have only one at the end.
I don't know, is maybe to Joan Obroni, who wants to reply. And I want to speak about alpaca because the brands are asking us to if we supply products with the alpaca certificate. They know that the main companies in Peru have been certificated in RIS. And but we know that the numbers are not enough to support an industrial production for the spinners. So my question is, could you help us to be more clear with the buyers, with the brands, because they expect that we sell to them the yarns in alpaca certificated, and we cannot, we should not, it's impossible. And I saw the numbers, the projection, they are in 5 years, we will not have enough, but not, I think more than 5 years. So, and another question is, do you make this difference between the population and the territory where the treatment of the animal is for culture, and other territory where maybe the breeders are more intensive and more intensive? So if you have this in the application of the standard, I think we have to apply for the different things, different standards, understand what I mean. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand your question, and I understand that there is a lot of anxiety and excitement from the brands because the RAS was already in place in order to be implemented. However, unlike mohair breeding or wool breeding, alpaca is an extensive type of breeding, and it's made in a way that 85% of the breeders are micro breeders that are scattered all over the Andean region. So when I say micro breeders, I mean breeders that have more than or less than 100 animals. So this is why we have like 90,000 families farming alpacas. I don't know how many mohair farms are in South Africa, but if I'm correct, maybe it's in the region of less than 1,000. No, so we have a major hurdle, an obstacle in the alpaca breeding. No, so in order to carry out a RAS certification for all the farms in Peru, it will take years. This has been a major breakthrough to certify 250 farms, no, just to prove that it's possible to certify. But we will not be in the short run with a huge critical mass of fibers certified. This is impossible. We could probably reach in 5 years to have 1 million kilos from 7 million kilos, which is what we expect in 5 years. But that will take 5 years at least. No, in the short run, probably we could get to 500,000 kilos in greasy. Huh? I'm talking greasy. When I say greasy, you have to deduct at least 22% with the yield, less than that. So I think RAS is at its early stages today. And next year, it would be a little bit more and so forth again. Now, what you asked as a second question, I answered earlier, 85% are micro breeders, and they breed the fiber. They have 100 animals, 150 animals, and 15% are medium and large scale breeders that have more than 1,000 heads or 2,000 heads, etc. So it's a very small portion that they have an intensive breeding. But even so, it's not like intensive breeding with like with sheep, that they have 50,000 or 100,000 heads in one farm. That's not possible in Peru. We have a very cultural aspect in the breeding of alpacas, because it has been from centuries. You know, it's within their culture to breed alpacas. It's part of the family, and I think that applies to 85% of all the breeders. The rest probably are more professionals in that sense. No, I'm not sure if I answer everything.
The risk, if you don't give the right information to the brands, the risk is to drop out from the collection of alpaca, because they say there are some brands who want only certificated fibers. So this is the real risk.
It's a very difficult, very difficult situation. Oh, it's for you. If you can help me.
Yeah. Probably we can ask to Textile Exchange if it's possible. Do you think it's possible that brand commitments align to the program of the association? So it's something, because I have seen numbers and plans, so we know that these capabilities are arriving. So if commitments of brand align to this capability, I think we are everybody safe.
So as proxy for Textile Exchange, I'm not sure if I'm ready to make a statement on behalf of them, but I can tell you from my experience of working with BKB, because I work for them as well part-time, it's a very valid, very valid question. And it is something that we are looking at and we are constantly working on, and it's the narrative that counts. I think what's very important is there's no, while Textile Exchange understands the challenges, and I think they're very open-minded in looking at different contexts of different countries and their challenges, including their cultural challenges. I know that from personal experience working in Lesotho, we've got the same kind of problem, great product, but to get them certified is going to take a long time. There is the willingness to look at it, but it cannot be at the destruction of the credibility of the standard. So unfortunately, these are long-term journeys that we've got to go on, but I'll definitely take that back to Textile Exchange, but it is something that they're very well aware of. There's always that question of volumes versus what the brands want and what we can give them. And I think it's a long-term partnership and conversation that needs to happen.
Thank you. Any other? Okay, so I think we can close. Thank you so much for your speech and for your inspiration. Thank you.